Welcome back to JDM Legends presented by Turn 14 Distribution, where today, come hell or high water, this engine is going into that engine bay. If you've been following along, you know this has been a full battle royale to get this engine prepped and ready to drop into the engine bay, but we are there. And when I left this engine a couple days ago, we had no oil leaks and the cooling system was free of any leaks either. But as luck would have it, or as my luck unfortunately, I came to find a bunch of oil sitting right here. You guys can see this. There is a puddle, and I started tracing it up and over and along the underside of the oil pan and block all the way to here. This right here. You see this? This is an oil cooler, and I pulled the bolt out and I noticed right away, you can see the O-ring here is completely flat, and that is where the oil is coming from. And it actually puked out quite a bit of oil. If I move this, you guys can't see it, but there's a ton of oil back here. If I put my finger in it, it's like a pool. So it's leaking pretty badly. And of course, guess what? The Nissan gasket kit that I ordered for this engine does not come with this O-ring, and there's also a larger O-ring on the backside here. It wasn't leaking from that O-ring. And what I did is I went into my O-ring stash and found this O-ring, which seems to be the exact size for this here. So I'm confident that's gonna work well. I do not, however, have that other O-ring. What I'm gonna do is order both O-rings up from the dealer, and if this for whatever reason leaks in the car, it's not gonna be a terrible job to get to, but we might as well just replace this right now. And there's my O-ring. You can see much thicker. It's certainly going to seal this bad boy up properly. So I'm gonna drop this in. I'm not gonna pressure test the system again. We've looked around everywhere else and it seems to be dry, so I think this is kind of like the last one spot that we potentially have an issue with. And we're just gonna send it. From here now, I think it is time we start prepping this thing to drop into the bay.
Is that the most fun engine install ever, PT?
It started off so well. Honestly, in my mind, I was thinking, wow, this went in within like 5 minutes. We had this thing down. We had it, the driver's side engine mount in place. And I was like, oh, this actually, there's a ton of room. You can fit this in. And there is, actually. There is quite a bit more space, I find, than most engine bays. But then we got down into the hole, that rabbit hole, and it sucked us deep. We are 2.5 hours in to this engine install, and about 2 hours and 25 minutes of that was spent trying to get the passenger side engine mount in place. What happened was the way the engine came in, it fell in that place, and then this side was too high. I couldn't get it. If you guys know the Nissans, essentially what happens is on the subframe, they have mounts they have provisions for mounts like this, and then the mounts come in and they're supposed to just like slide in. This one here came in and it just sat too high. and everything we tried to do, we could not get it down. I think it was the axle that was binding on that side once, the axle was binding on this side once. I tore the boot on this axle. I don't know how, it just happened. I've learned a valuable lesson once again. If you're doing this job, just take the axles out. It just makes this engine drop in much easier. We didn't do that, so we kind of fought with it. And if you're dropping the engine, drop it with the subframe. I feel like that's the way to go, because we would have not fussed with this. We put the subframe up, shot it up in here, would have been done. So with that in mind, what's gonna happen is me and Dave are gonna go home. We're gonna regroup, we're gonna come back tomorrow, and we are going to start bolting stuff on, which I think what we're gonna do next is the gearbox. It is now time to install our clutch and flywheel combo, and of course we have gone with a spec clutch, our go-to clutch for almost all our builds, DP. I don't remember the last time we haven't used a spec clutch, and that's because we love them. We have no issues with them. This is their Stage 2 Plus, which as you can see has a 6-buck design on this side, which is a carbon material. And on this side it has a full face with a Kevlar material, which obviously makes it better for street driving. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. We've used this Stage 2 Plus on plenty of builds and really like it, because it does have that high torque rating, but it doesn't really chatter too much on the street. So I think it's kind of like a perfect dual purpose clutch. Now we do have ourselves an issue here, and you're probably looking at it and thinking, why is this flywheel so much more shallow than our stock flywheel here? And that is because the R34 6-speed uses a dual mass flywheel. So you can see it's got a little bit of kick here, and that's just to dampen noise and reduce shock load. What we have here is an R33 flywheel. And we just called spec. We're trying to confirm whether we can use this flywheel. It doesn't look like that's going to be the case, because it is too shallow, and I don't think the release point on the clutch fork is gonna work. So we're kind of in a holding pattern right now, trying to figure out what to do here. So in the meantime, we're gonna jump in the back, which is something that I've been meaning to do anyways. If you guys have been following along, then you know up front we did use that RB26 from an R33, and we used the R33 oil pan, which has a 411 gear set in it. Now, using the 6-speed, you can't use the R34 rear diff, because this is the overall gear ratio is a 3.5. And so what I did is I sourced a V-spec R33 diff that is going to give us that 411 gear ratio. So that means this one does have to come down, and we do need to make the swap. I had a quick look at it. Everything does look to be the same.
Quick question for you, PT. We're going from R34 to R33. Is this not going backwards? What's going on here?
We're just trying to build a response monster too, DP. And I know the turbos that I have are on the large side. So this theoretically will keep me moving quicker and keep the RPMs up, so I'm not gonna be lagging out. So I think it's all win-win here, but yeah, we are going to, sometimes you gotta go backwards to go forwards, right? Was that complicated, DP, or what?
I mean, it wasn't. It seemed like it was more work than it should have been, but
that seems to be the general consensus here right now, is it should be, what's happening is we look at it like, it's not gonna take us a while, but again, we're doing it for the first time, and it just ends up taking more work than it should be. Pro tip, always unplug your connector. Yeah. And what I foolishly forgot to do too is, I was It's like, oh, these axles aren't coming out. I wonder what's going on. Then I realized I forgot one of the bolts up top. So a comedy of errors, unfortunately. Quick question for you guys. We had a bunch of oil and it's still dripping from up here on the axle, on this side of the axle cup. And you can see there's almost like a seal or the diaphragm that's right here. And this is rubber. So I'm assuming it is leaking through here. We're not exactly sure if that's the case. Like, does this come out? Is this replaceable? Certainly post in the comments if you guys have worked on 33 or 34 GTRs, like what you would do with this, because we didn't actually have any leaking here. So it wasn't, you know, leaking out, but there was some internal stuff going on. So it might be something that we want to service in the future. And looking at this, it is the exact same as that 33 V-Spec diff, so we are just gonna do this all over again. So I was just giving this thing a quick look over before we install it and noticed that the threads in the cups here were really rusted. So busted out the drill, and I've got this like little metal wire brush, which has come in handy quite a bit lately. I really do like these tools. I'll leave a link in the description for them. And you can see they clean out the thread so nicely. A couple times back and forth on all of them. Like, look at that. And the threads are essentially rust free.
It's time to fill our R33 diff up here, and for that we are using Valvoline's full synthetic in a 75W90 with a limited slip additive in it already, which seems to be the one thing that I could find in terms of complaints online amongst R33 and R34 GTR guys, is that if you put a fluid in here that doesn't have this LSD additive in it, they can get a little bit noisy. But otherwise, there didn't seem to be any like, oh my God, you have to use this fluid or that fluid. And we know from experience that this Valvoline full synthetic gear oil works exceptionally well. We've used it in pretty much every car we've ever built, and it's always done as well. And now in this new flex fill container, well, she's in there. Now just like one of those energy drinks that the marathon runners use, you squeeze the bag to get all those nutrients in your body. Or in this case,
you cut the right size hole too. Look at that.
I did.
You pumped that thing
in
big.
there. I went big, everybody. All right, well, that's 1 quart down, 1/2 to go, and we're done on the diff.
We've got some more news on the flywheel front. We did speak to spec, and this is in fact the incorrect flywheel, and we cannot use it. The depth is wrong. So we now are left with using our, oh geez, which before I can, I'll get to this. Look at the weight difference. Man, I'm kind of bummed we're not going with one of these.
Yeah, and
probably like half the weight DP.
Yeah, and the guys at spec were like, we'll get you one as soon as we can, but they don't have any in stock, so.
Yeah. I mean, it's an R34. It's kind of like a unicorn right now.
It is,
so
it is.
I wouldn't expect spec to have a ton of those on the shelf. So, so here we are. This is our stock R34 dual mass flywheel, and thank you to Radek over at RS Tuning. He is a savior. I didn't even think you could machine these. I always thought you needed to buy new dual mass flywheels because of, you know, obviously the dual mass setup in the springs. He has a shop somewhere that I think does this for him, and he got this done for us in less than 2 days. So huge thanks to him. All right, let's get this guy on here. There we are. Now I'm just gonna put one bolt in here just to hold this in place. For once, I did not go into my stash. I went into Dave's stash and pulled this beautiful tool out here.
Right.
You know what this is? This is a Beams flywheel holder tool, and I think this is from what you said, SQ Engineering?
That's right, SQ Engineering.
Yeah, so they build this and you bolt it up to your beams, and obviously you can see here, I had to get a little clever with it to make it bolt up, but it's worked out and it is holding the flywheel here, which is fantastic. So now all I'm left to do here is to torque this to, what was it, like 94
foot-pounds or 130-ish Newton meters.
Okay, well, I'm just gonna
in the metric world.
Start by going to 40 on every one in a crisscross pattern.
Yep.
And then we'll go send on this. So now, with everything torqued and paint marked, you can see we are just gonna wipe this flywheel clean and start bolting up the spec clutch here. Here we go. Pretty easy, simple job there. With this bolted in place right now, why don't we jump up front, because we do need to tighten the crank pulley bolt. So the crank pulley bolt on the RB is arguably, I think, the most torque that I've ever seen needed to put into a bolt like that. It is 344 foot-pounds, which is absolutely insane. Before we put this engine in, I did grab the Milwaukee. I did set it to number 4 kill mode on it, which I think is like 700 foot-pounds, and gave it a bunch of dac-a-dacs. Our torque wrench goes to 250 foot-pounds. So I'm just gonna check it now and see where we are at and if this thing will move at all. And then that will give us an indication of where we are. So I'm gonna watch here. I'm gonna pull it. Oh my. So we are maxing out the wrench there at 264 foot-pounds. It did not move that bolt at all. So I'm pretty confident, and I'm gonna say 100% confident that this thing is torqued to a level that is either at 344 or maybe slightly above, because that is a monster Milwaukee gun that I used on it. Man, what a beast of a gearbox. But fun fact, this is the same V160 that the Supra uses, except you've got this big transfer case on here, so oof. We do have it strapped down. It feels pretty sturdy, so I think we're good to go. But I wanted to give you guys a tip that never really occurred to me until I was told it. And again, Radek from RS Tuning was like, when you're putting this gearbox up, make sure it's not in neutral, because then the spline here, if you grab the rear of the tail shaft and you try to spin it, as you can see, it doesn't spin this. I don't know, I think in the years past, we've been putting gearboxes in, we haven't really checked if it was in neutral or in gear, and we're just like spinning this thing thinking it's rotating it to try to get it to go in. So what you do is just put this thing into gear, and now look, now you have the ability to like turn it a little bit and get it to line up. So pro tip on that one, we are gonna lube this bad boy up. I did put a new throwout bearing in there, as you can see. So we are ready to go. Cross your fingers for us, guys, because this is gonna be a fun install. Okay, well. Oh God, that's just how she goes. Okay. No, yeah. Fuck. No, that's it. Shim this up.
Yeah.
It's both sides. It's hitting here too.
Hitting on your side too.
Yeah. Yeah, because we're just like jammed up here.
And every time you raise that, we just jam up again.
At this point. Oh, see? Yeah. Of course, that was gonna fucking happen. Still aren't good. We're not gonna make it. We're both hitting. So okay.
Back up a bit.
And now you can't because you're hitting the tunnel.
No, we're worse than ever.
Oh! My hand! Oh!
Okay. Oh, Jesus Christ. Lower it. I got it. Just lower it. Just lower it. Lower it.
Sakes. Oh my God.
Lower it. I got it. Just fucking lower it. Just lower it.
So DP, I think this is the Nissan gods repaying you for talking so much smack. Is that?
Maybe, although it's a good track. It's the same gearbox. It should be happy, but the tail shaft hates me because, wow, that pinned my hand in there really good between the gearbox and the frame rail. And the good news is nothing seems to be broken.
That is very, very good.
There's some swelling, and obviously the skin's broken a bit. It feels kind of like the tendons or muscles got strained a bit, but
yeah.
I mean, I already called this hand the stranger. Now it's going to kind of be like the handicapped stranger, so just adds to the eroticism, everybody. So,
and I'm sure people are wondering what the heck happened there.
Yeah.
And what happened is our trans jack, we had it at an angle so much so when we started taking it back, the top nut that holds it on backed itself off, and you can see it's this tiny little guy. This is kind of I told Dave 10 minutes prior to this that we need to get a new trans jack because this one's kind of crappy. It's as cheap as they come, and for good reason, because somebody should have Loctited that nut. Or
did it get pinched in there and
it didn't. It just got right to the end, and then once we started turning it, it just backed itself off. It shouldn't be backing itself off, but for whatever reason, I think this is such a heavy gearbox or the strain of it. So yeah,
live and learn, I guess.
And we still have a gearbox that is sitting here. We've been now, trying a bunch of different ways. We just can't get the input shaft to clear the pressure plate to get it in the hole. Once it clears, once it goes in there, we'd be golden, but we're hitting the chassis. So it's not a great scenario right now. What we're gonna try is, I've got the jack here, the stand, pushing this engine down a little bit more because literally we're like, man, you can see we're so close. We're just less than maybe half an inch
quarter
of this thing like dropping in. So we have fixed our tranny jack here. We put a bolt and some Loctite on it. So, and we won't be twisting this up.
I won't be touching anything here ever again.
Yeah, past the point where we should have gone, unfortunately.
I think I was turning it the wrong way, and maybe that's why it backed out.
Yeah, that bolt back there.
It's all a comedy of errors, but
yes, more errors.
Let's try not to do it again.
But we're forging ahead here. Still hitting some. Okay, there he goes. Oh yes. It only took you crushing your hand almost to get to this point.
Just sacrifice a digit and you're good to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's much more square now. There you go. That was it.
That's it.
That was it, boy. Yeah.
Yes.
It's in.
Woo! Milestone achieved. Look at this.
It's looking like a car again under here, isn't it?
The gearbox is in. Drive shaft is in. All the center diff. Little drive shaft there is bolted up, so
everything's torqued to spec and paint marked. So you know that you torqued it because we will forget tomorrow otherwise.
That's right. I don't love putting the paint marks on this, but you know what? It's a way to remember right now, and we do need to be remembering things because
we do. It's not easy.
We did just review the footage of this gearbox falling, and it's quite comical.
We had a good laugh about
I hope you guys enjoyed it.
Yes.
Thankfully, we're not. Dave's not short a finger or something like that.
No,
so.
the pimp hand is too strong to lose a finger that easily, everybody. It just means it's going to be even stronger once it recovers all the callus and toughness that'll be in there, which means I get to pimp slap the GTR even harder come springtime. So it's a win in my books.
I'm not going to say anything. I feel bad that happened. So you know,
it could have been bad.
Yes.
But
yeah.
It'll be sore for a few days, but it's working. That's all I can ask for.
And really, it's just the comedic value for you guys.
Yeah, we do it all for you guys.
You guys got a good laugh out of it. So we're going to wrap it there. We of course wanted to
maybe wrap this later when I get home too.
Yeah. We of course wanted to get a bunch more stuff done, but you know, at the very least, we do have a full drivetrain loaded up. So really stay tuned for the next episode. It is going to be a good one where we hit the engine bay hard. We've got a lot of, intercooler, piping, intakes,
radiator,
all that jazz has got to go together. So it's going to certainly be a good episode. So as always, thank you guys so much for watching. We certainly appreciate the support, and we will see you in the next one. That's a lot of plastic and foam there. My lungs are feeling a little heavy, DP.
Yeah, I bet.
Probably not a good idea. I should have been wearing some face protection. We did get rid of this. It was too flimsy. It was kind of getting in the way.